Okay, welcome to the Wpial Blitz Show podcast. My name is Bruce Badgley. Really, the guts of this show is my man Ian McMeans. And Ian, why don't you go ahead and introduce our very special guest tonight?
Yeah, we are thrilled and honored to have Knoch head coach Tim Burchett joining us. Coach, thank you for joining us and congratulations on your 3-0 start to the season.
I appreciate it, guys. Yeah, no, and thank you for all you do for high school football, and all across the state. So, no, let's have some fun.
Yeah. So, back on our season preview show, we talked about how Knoch was 1-9 last year, but I think 4 or 5 out of those 9 losses were by less than 10 points. So it was really a team that we were like, this team has a lot of potential to kind of take that next step. You had a lot of young players last year. So can you talk about how, you've gone from losing those close games last year to now you've won 3 very close games this year, and that step that your team has taken?
Yeah, no, this place has taken probably 15 years off my life just from these close games. So, no, look, our introductory camp meeting, we just put a slide up and put up 5 different scores. And it came down to like 6 plays, honestly, a couple extra points, a couple of series of defense, a couple of series of offense. That was the difference between 1-9 and, 7-3, 6-4, in that ballpark. So, it was something that was talked about. We're not afraid to talk about the hard stuff in our program. And I think, culturally, that has to be the huge step. So, and that leads us into, this year and those 3 games that, obviously with 1 score. Should the games have been 1 score? Probably not. But, sometimes you have to win close to win big. So that's kind of the stage I hope that we're in, as we continue to grow this thing.
Yeah, and you and I were talking a little bit before the show got started, Coach, and to go from the type of season that you had last year of really upheaval with your field and everything like that. And now to come in, you've got a brand new turf field, you're 3-0. Talk about the night and day between last year and this year.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's obviously everybody wants to have success, but you have to really dig and really find foundational pieces. The kids who want to be there, the kids who are going to go through, the really hard times to have success. And I think we did that. We have about 50 kids. And I love them all, and we work really hard. We work really hard, and I'm very demanding, and I'm not going to lie to anybody about that. But no, it's like I said, when you're that close, and again, they haven't had success here in a little while. Before they have, so but in the last couple 3, 4, 5 years, it's been a struggle. So that takes time to change, and that changes with practice habits, with showing up to practice on time, showing up to workouts. All the things that, people really don't see. That's how you get it turned around. And look, it's only a start. We want to play meaningful games in October. So that's always the goal, and that will remain the goal as we go throughout this year.
So, Coach, one of the things we've talked about a lot on this show is how, especially for a new head coach coming in, obviously you're trying to instill your system with the high schoolers, but it's also really important to kind of get in with the middle school teams and instill kind of a same system so that, having that continuity between bringing the kids up. Do you think you being a middle school teacher at the school district kind of gives you a little bit of knowledge of, I know you're only in your 2nd year, but a little bit of knowledge of kind of what's coming next for your program too?
Yeah, look, it can't hurt. I teach in the middle school. I see all those kids every day. I'm in both buildings. They're attached. So I teach a couple classes in the high school. I teach, in the middle school as well. So I know everybody from basically 6th grade on. They come through me. So I'd like to think I have really good rapport with the kids in the school. So yeah, I'm recruiting every day. So, and that's not going to change. So last year when I took over, we had like 13 kids in the middle school program. We're up into the mid-20s now, and hopefully we're going to continue to grow that as we go through. But yeah, I mean, it can only help.
Do you think that now that you're 3-0, that there's maybe some added pressure on this team that maybe they didn't think they were going to have coming into the season?
Yeah, look, I was talking to my wife before this. I said, look, there's that the Swamp Kings documentary. I kind of checked that out before the season started, and controversial, but Urban Meyer talked about the pressure that you feel as a head coach. And look, I'm a Wpial coach. I'm not coaching in the SEC, but a lot of what he said it hits home. Like I said before, we're a 7-day-a-week program. We're in the office on Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings. I'm usually there by 6:30 in the morning. Putting work in. So it's a lot. It's a lot on your family. It's a lot on the people around you. But I don't think the kids feel pressure. I think the kids are enjoying having success. They're learning how to have success, and I think that's a huge thing. We talk about ego being the enemy, and that's huge for us. It's it really doesn't matter what happened on Friday. It's Monday now, and we have to move on and try to go 1-0 this week.
Yeah, go ahead, Ian.
Yeah. So one of the other things, I know you're a former offensive line coach, so on the show, I always like to give.
Tell?
I read the article.
I'm kidding.
No, I did read the article that was in the trip. But at any rate, so one of the things we like to try and do on the show is to give shout outs to the players that don't usually get shout outs. That it's easy to find stats for the quarterbacks, the running backs, the receivers, all that stuff. Everybody kind of, it's easy to find their names. It's easy to know them. But you want to give a shout out to your linemen, because really they're the ones that set the stage down in the trenches for everything else to happen.
Yeah, I mean, look, they're the heartbeat of our program. They eat dinner first. They eat every meal that we have. They eat first. We introduced them at our home game, our last home game. They were the only ones that were introduced. So I mean, look, they're the most important part of the program. Without them, we can't have success. And I'd like to think we have a pretty good offensive and defensive line. So we have 3 or 4 returning starters up front. We moved a fullback to center who's taken to it very, very well. And our D line is playing really well right now. So yeah, I mean, it's the most important part of your team. And anybody who tells you otherwise, I don't know if they know what they're talking about then.
Well, we'll talk a little bit about your staff too. I mean, obviously there's a lot of dedication by these guys too, obviously following your lead, but talk a little bit about your coaching staff and what they're doing to get this team ready to play each and every week.
Right. Like you said, we're dedicated. My assistants and I are in there Sunday morning. We're there 5 or 6 hours. I brought a couple of guys with me from Peters Township, and I couldn't do this without them. So Joe Farkas is my receiver coach and helps me with the offense, and Aaron Van Adder's my O-line coach. So God bless Aaron. He's kind of been around me for 5 or 6 years now. He helped me with the O-line at Peters. So I don't know how he does it, but he's been around me for way too long. So, but I can be miserable sometimes. So he knows how to talk to me. So, but no, otherwise Connor Shinsky, he played at Knoch. He helps with our running backs, O-line, special teams. He's a jack of all trades. He's a really good coach, has a bright future. And then defensively, we made a huge change on defense this year. We overhauled the entire staff on defense. Robbie Moss is my defensive coordinator. He does a great job. Mike Hill coaching safeties, and Connor Shinsky helps with linebackers as well. And Joe Farkas coaches corners as well. So it's a litany of people who are in this for the right reasons and coaching up kids and doing what it takes to turn this thing around.
Go ahead, Ian.
How difficult was it, to sort of instill a more up-tempo, wide-open passing attack that obviously Cody Mullins, the third leading passer in the Wpial right now after 3 weeks. So traditionally I always thought of Knoch as a very run-heavy kind of program, but recently we've seen a lot of these run-heavy type programs go to these more open passing offenses with Mars and some other schools like that. Central Catholic this year we're opening things up. So was it a difficult kind of culture shift there, or did it come pretty naturally to the kids?
Well, I don't think it was a culture shift. I think it was a culture shock. Because look, I mean, to be honest, they threw the ball 41 times 2 years ago. And I think we threw the ball for the 41st time in the second quarter of the Indiana game last year. So that was our second game. So yeah, look, I likened it from, Knoch was, they were speaking French and we were trying to teach them German. So just a whole different world, teaching pass protection, teaching, getting kids on the jugs machine and keep teaching them how to catch passes. And it was a lot. And I thought, to a point, Cody's Cody's a great football player. Has a really bright future. He broke, a school record last year in a 1-9 season. So, I don't know what that says, but it's a testament to him of still being able to have success in the system. But, we really kind of reworked the system around him. So we have like I said, we've been at Peters. I have coaches, who have coached at South Fayette when South Fayette was, rolling in their dynasty. So we have coaches from all over. And I think that experience of having other people, who have coached outside of Knoch, I think has been a great experience for the kids.
How exciting was school today? I mean, now it's 3-0 and, big win on Friday night. And so, I mean, what's the temperature like there with this success on the football field?
It's good. I mean, look, like I said, I'm in the halls a lot because I'm going from the high school to middle school, and I've always been a pretty visible figure there. But no, it's good. It's better than walking in the hallways and being afraid of what people were going to say. So it's good. It's getting there. I thought, when I was interviewing for the job, I brought up that I thought, like I said, I was at a different place. I was coaching in another place and, teaching there. So it just felt apathetic. There was just no care. And I feel like, our home games we're creating a pretty good little atmosphere at our stadium. And that's a testament to the kids of Knoch, of our student body. So it takes time. It's still building and growing and something that we need to continue on. But no, it's definitely, it's a hell of a lot better than being 0-3.
Yeah. You got a final question there for Coach Ian?
Yeah. Just any, anything you want to plug, anything you guys have going on, any fundraisers, any like how to get in touch with you on social media, anything like that you want to give a shout out to before we let you go?
I think we have a Knoch football Twitter account. I try not to be too active on Twitter. I think some coaches get a little bit too crazy with that. But no, look, it's an exciting time for our program. We're just trying to keep this thing rolling, and then hopefully we can talk again.
Yeah, hopefully we can talk again. I'll tell you what, we're gonna have to write that down, Ian, because he would be like the first 2-time coach interview. So all right, man, look, you make it into the playoffs there, Ian. I guess we're gonna have to bring Coach back on there.
I appreciate that.
I guess so. Yeah, it's and that's kind of the weird thing about how the Wpial set up the schedules now is you have, especially in 3A where you've got only 6 teams in your conference, so really like the whole first half of your schedule is warm-up games essentially. I mean, they count towards your overall record but not towards making the playoffs. So it's I don't know, I grew up in the age of you might get 1 or 2 of those games throughout the year and the rest of your whole schedule was all conference games and it all mattered. Right. So
probably how it should be, but that's a discussion for another day.
Yeah, exactly right. Coach, thank you so much for your time this evening. I know obviously we want to get you back to your family since the season or whatever like that, but best of luck the rest of the year. And you heard it here first, man. You make the playoffs, you'll be our first 2-time guest in season of a coach on the Wpial Blitz Show podcast. So congratulations, and we'll see you in the playoffs. Okay.
I appreciate that. Thank you guys again.
All right.
Thanks a lot,
just
Coach.
exit out then, Coach. All right. Thanks a lot. Take
Appreciate
care
it.
now. All right. We'll see you. Bye-bye now. Wow. And Tim got on pretty early, so we had some good quality time to, talk before the interview started and that, Ian. But yeah, I mean, that's a great get by you because obviously 1-9 to 3-0. And then, the whole backstory of the field not really being ready last year and playing all road games or playing one. And I tell you what, from total upheaval to like now, it's got to be great.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And they were a team, it happens. You start a bunch of young kids that haven't started before, a bunch of, freshmen, sophomores, juniors. It's going to take time, especially for a program that hadn't made the playoffs in 6 or 7 years. Like they have, it's a rebuilding process. We've talked about, the process on this show a lot, and you can see them now trending in the upward direction towards, going from, kind of the bottom of the heap in the conference. And really last year they lost their first 9 games. They didn't win a game until the last week of the season. And like you said, there was just kind of a lot of chaos going on around the program, first year head coach, but you can tell they really put in a lot of work this offseason. And Knoch as a district is very rural. It's like southern Butler County, kind of far away from Pittsburgh and everything.
Sure.
So even how he talked about, being a 7-day-a-week program and getting the kids like into the weight room and the gym, like that's a challenge for those rural districts that are so big that you might have to drive like 20 or 30 minutes from your house to get just to the school, or, to the school in the field to work out. So it's a commitment for those kids, for their families and all that too. Just to, be a part of a football program there. And Knox had some success in some other sports over, the last few years. So it's good to see that start to translate onto the football field too. I think we've seen that with some other schools. Union comes to mind when we talked with, the folks from the Lawrence County Sports Network last year. They talked about how, Union, the year before they won the Wpial title in football, had a really good basketball season. And they got a lot of those kids from the basketball team to come out for the football team. And they were just really gifted athletes. And that kind of helped carry them through. And it also made them, not afraid of anything because they'd seen it all on the basketball court and weren't going to back down from anybody. So, I think they're building something special there at Knoch. And, Coach is right. They went to the Wpial championship game back in 2011, but haven't made the playoffs during the 6 classification era at all. So, that I think got to go back to 2014, I think, for the last time that Knoch made the playoffs. So it's been a little while, but they're trending in the right direction. And, in the conference they play in is not easy. Freeport's a really good team. Shadyside Academy is a really good team. Deer Lakes is trending upwards as well. They're off to a hot start. They've got a good quarterback in Derek Burke. And so they've got some other stiff competition. East Alleghandy's got some kids coming back. So Michael Cahill at quarterback. So they're gonna have their work cut out for them in conference play, but it should make for a really fun and exciting conference schedule as we kind of start to watch these playoff races evolve over the next few weeks.
Yeah, and give credit to Coach Burchett there too. I mean, changing the whole defensive coaching staff,
Yeah.
I mean, in the offseason.
I mean, you want to talk about upheaval. He talked about both offense and defense, right? He said he changed the whole defensive staff this year. Last year, he put it in a passing game, right? That they didn't have a passing game before that. So it's been 2 years in both sides of the ball.
Yeah. Look, obviously there's a buy-in by the community and the administration to, give this some time. They obviously have a lot of confidence in coach, and ultimately that types of patience and confidence, the community sees that, and obviously that's just going to grow and get better. And kudos for to really the whole organization there, because it's not just one man. Even though coach says, hey, he's a 7-day-a-week guy, well, it's still a coaching staff, as you talked about, the community, the families, to put it all together. So you got control, man. Let's get this thing rolling.
All right. We have a lot of really good stuff tonight. So,
oh my God, I'm sitting there.
All right. So thank you everyone for joining us on the Wpial Blitz show. If you're joining us, you know how to find us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and our rarely used Instagram account. You can also check out all of my Wpial articles, standings page, all that on steelcityblitz.com. And thanks to our title sponsor, Go MVB, which Bruce will tell you more about later in the show. All right, so let's talk about some key results from week 2, diving right into it.
The team that I had ranked in my top 5 that you didn't.
Yes. Penn Hills, once again, winning the John Ladon Bowl, because John Ladon won a state title at Penn Hills and then went to Pine Richland and won a state title there. So since Coach Ladon, friend of the show, has moved to Pine Richland, he is now 0-2 against his former school. Penn Hills coming up with a big win over Pine Richland. Really exciting game. Julian Duggar, the Penn Hills quarterback, who's a pick commit, really took the game over, had a couple big rushes that set up some scores. Penn Hills defense played really impressive, got some key interceptions against Pine Richland. So second year in a row that Penn Hills has beaten Pine Richland, and the arrow's definitely pointing in the right direction for a Penn Hills team that missed the playoffs last year. But they beat Pine Richland last year and lost some really close games afterwards.
Yeah.
So they just have to keep trending in that right direction, right? It's a stepping stone on the way. I'm a big fan of what they have on that team. They've got some really talented kids, not just Julian Duggar, but some of the other players, Amir Key, Cam Thomas, some of the other ones that are really good. So I'm hoping they can kind of put it all together, because they could contend for a Wpial title if they can get all the pieces in the right place.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I thought as well. That's why I had them ranked.
Yep. And don't count out Pine Richland.
No.
Conference they lost to Penn Hills last year and went on to win the state title. So don't count out the Rams yet.
Not at all. I wouldn't say that that's it's not going to be a derogatory remark, in my book. So
no. The other big win, Cannon McMillan, in one of the few conference games that happened last week. Cannon Mac lost to defending 6A champs North Allegheny the week prior, bounces back for a big win over Seneca Valley. And if you recall, last year, this was the game that decided who got the last playoff spot in 6A. So potentially a big result as we look forward towards the rest of the season in the playoff races, but a lot of football still to be played. So I'm not saying that Seneca Valley is out and Cannon Mac is in at this point, but potentially a meaningful result as we look forward. Some other big games that happened, Bell Vernon and McKeesport going to overtime. They were tied at 14 and really a defensive struggle. McKeesport kind of shut down Quentin Martin, the Penn State recruit from Bell Vernon, for most of the game, and then went to overtime. Bell Vernon scored and kicked the extra point. McKeesport got down to 4th and goal from the 2, and I've talked about McKeesport's triple option all the time, right? They run the ball. They threw the ball on 4th and 2, and it was incomplete. So it they went against their trend and didn't work out for them this time. But it was a non-conference game, so no harm, no foul. But two really good teams matching up, and it was a great game. Montour, one of the other great storylines early in the year here, stormed back from, I think they were 17 down at one point, to tie the game against South Fayette with about 2 minutes remaining. They got an interception on defense and then came back and scored again to beat South Fayette. Really exciting, just back and forth game. Two really good quarterbacks in Jake Wolf from Montour and Lamont from South Fayette. So just an exciting back and forth game between two, I'll say, nearby schools. They played in the same conference for a couple years when the 6 classification started. So sort of rivals, but nearby schools in kind of southwestern Allegheny County. So that was fun. Some big upsets this week. North Hills almost shut out Gateway. It was 26-0 after 3 quarters. And there was a lot of chatter on Twitter about what's going on with Gateway this year. They only scored 7 points against Mount Lebanon. They got shut out the second week against Woodland Hills, and then they didn't have any points through 3 quarters against North Hills. So Gateway's off to an 0-3 start. And for a team that was considered a title contender, not a great start. I know they've had some injuries that they hopefully can bounce back from and get some guys back and healthy here. But
I said, it doesn't count, right? Conference schedule now, they've got the ability to turn the page.
They do. Yep. And then Seton LaSalle, who went winless a year ago, defeating the defending Wpial champion Steel Valley in double overtime. Just a heck of a performance from Seton LaSalle there. So congratulations to the Rebels. They're now 2-1. Really, really good start for them. And then Union, the defending 1A champions, goes down to Cornell in a non-conference game, 30-14. So another, 2 defending Wpial champions and 1 team that was thought of as a title contender all going down in week 2. So not a good week for the favorites. But some other noteworthy results: Knoch getting that win over Beaver Falls to move to 3-0. Shaler beating Plum. We talked a lot about both of those teams so far this year. Penn Trafford had a big lead against Woodland Hills. Woodland Hills stormed back in the 4th quarter, but couldn't quite close it out. Indiana, really nice bounce back season so far. I think they only won 2 or 3 games last year, and they're off to a 2-1 start this year with a solid win over Shady Side Academy. And then Clairton getting their first win of the year in their pseudo rivalry with Olsh, since they've met. Pseudo rivalry, I call it. They've met in the playoffs 5 straight years. So, that's not a like old traditional rivalry, but the buddings of a new rivalry. You meet in the playoffs that many times, you develop a little bit of rivalry.
Absolutely. And those are the kind of rivalries that you want, because it means that both teams have had successful seasons.
Yeah. There was a point a couple years ago where whoever had won the Clairton Olsh playoff game had gone on to win the Wpial title in like 3 straight years or something.
Wow.
So it was, all right. Also, some milestone victories. Thomas Jefferson defeated their rival West Mifflin to get their 500th victory in school history. And then Montour's head coach Lucero got his 200th career victory. So some pretty cool milestones, both happening in the same week here.
Nice.
All right. And we talked a lot about Knoch turning a 1-9 into a 3-0 start. So I decided to look at some other programs here that have, sort of turned things around a little bit to start this season. Waynesburg went from 0-10, is now 3-0. Knoch obviously 1-9 to 3-0. Seton LaSalle improving by 2 games from 0-10 to 2-1. Avella has already surpassed their win total from last year. Connellsville, Elwood City, Shenango, all equaling their win totals in just 3 weeks. It took them the whole season to get to last year, along with West Green. Sorry, West Green, didn't mean to leave you out there. And then Southmoreland and Cornell. That they're 1 win shy of where they were last year, so those programs also off to very good starts to this season as well. Having losing seasons last year, just winning 4 games, and now being off to 3-0 starts, trending in the right direction for those programs. And actually Southmoreland plays Knoch this week, so kind of a convergence, even though it's a non-conference game, of 2 teams that are kind of in a resurgence and turning their programs around. So pretty cool to see those 2 match up in a non-conference game. That's probably our storyline game of the week this week.
Ian, do you find this turnaround? I mean, you're looking at all of the teams on the screen there. The turnaround seemed to be with the schools of in the lower classifications. I mean, do you find that? I mean, let's just say, do you think that's a trend, or that the larger schools, it's much more difficult to really kind of turn it around? Is that what this sheet tells us?
So with the exception of Connellsville, which is a 4A school, you're right, all the rest of them are either 3A or below. I think for the smaller schools, once you kind of hit that rock bottom place, it's really hard to come back from, because there's just not a lot of crop of kids to try and draw from, right? Like
not a lot of bodies to choose from.
Right. Like some of the bigger schools, Butler had a really long losing streak in the Wpial before they went the independent route, and now are sort of playing in D10 but sort of independent. It's kind of a weird arrangement, but like they've had a couple like close to 500 seasons now. But Butler's a 6A size program. So, Butler had bodies. They just had to go out and find them and get them on the football field and, teach them, coach them up how to play. Sure. And actually one of my longtime hypotheses was that, school size mattered less than roster size, because back when I think Butler had like a 28 game losing streak or something like that at the time they left to go independent, but like Butler had a smaller roster than Aliquippa. And as we know, Aliquippa 1A size school playing up in then 3A, now 4A, but Aliquippa had more kids on their roster than Butler, who is a 6A size school and just struggling to compete. So, it's all about getting kids out to play. I feel like roster size makes a huge difference. Especially because 1 or 2 injuries really can derail your season when you're a small school. and some of the small schools too, like 2 years ago, West Green won the conference title, but all those kids graduated.
Sure.
And, when you're a 1A size program and have 12 kids graduate, that's pretty much your whole starting roster. And, sometimes some of those schools only have 25 or 30 kids on the roster. So now all of a sudden you're starting freshmen and sophomores, kind of have to start over and, get back at it. So there's some of that. I think there's a lot of different factors involved. Some of it is, coaching. Some of it is just, sort of that building for the long term, right? We always talk about how building a successful program, yes, you got to do it in high school, but you also have to like loop in the middle school levels and things like that. And that's how you kind of get into that program mode where you can just bring the middle schoolers right up and into the high school program and have them ready to go. Well, so yeah,
it just seems that with the smaller class, just like you talked about, that with the schools with the smaller classifications, have the ability to be that year to year, it's much more graduation rates and levels are so much more impactful to the football team than I think the larger programs there. That it's more of a locomotive syndrome. Takes forever to get started, takes forever to stop, kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Although that being said, that being said, some of the longest losing streaks that have happened have been in the larger programs.
Well, that's what I mean. It just takes longer for them to kind of, because of the competition that they're playing, I think too. Mm-hmm. I think it has a lot to do with it. It's a combination of the two.
Yes, I'd agree with that. Yeah. So it may be easier for some of the smaller schools to turn themselves around, but it's also a lot easier for a smaller school that like wins a conference title to then go like 2-8 the next year.
That's exactly right. And much more volatility in the lower classifications.
Yes. Which makes programs like Clairton and even Aliquippa, which is a 1A size school playing up, all the more impressive that they've been able to sustain the same level of success for so many years over time.
Absolutely. I'll let you say not boundary schools.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. All the boundary schools that can maintain the same level of success over time is incredibly impressive. Yeah. All right. So the flip side of that though is 3 teams that were deemed as contenders coming into the season off to some slow starts. Both Gateway and Sarah Catholic are 0-3. Stowe Rocks is 0-2. And as we say, it is not time to push the panic button yet. I just found the graphic and liked it. So no, it's not time to push the panic button yet.
But see, I think it is on Gateway. I mean, we've been saying this. This isn't the first time that they not met expectations. I mean, and so for you, what has created these expectations with Gateway, and why aren't they fulfilling in the end?
Well, I think one factor is injuries for Gateway. Brad Burchett got a little bit dinged up. I know they put in a new passing system this year. And I think part of it with Gateway is that, Brad Burchett was at Jeanette his freshman year, took the team to the state championship, got a scholarship offer from Oregon as a freshman. And I think that really raised the hype level on him. Going into his sophomore year, he transferred to a bigger program, led the Wpial in passing. So it's not like he's not a talented kid, right? Led the Wpial in passing as a sophomore with an Oregon offer. But I don't think he's gotten any other like Power 5 school offers since then, right? Like he has a couple offers from like MAC schools, but like no one else has really offered him. So I think, but people see it like, oh, Oregon, like, you think like Marcus Mariota and all these big up-tempo passing games. And so I think there was a lot of hype because of that scholarship offer that he got. And that's not his fault, right? I mean, the school offered him an opportunity to go play football there for free. It's not the kid's fault that he got an offer from him. So I think that just kind of led to the hype. They were a playoff team last year that lost in the first round in a close game to a team that went to the Wpial championship game on Upper St. Clair, that they've had recent success. They've won 2 Wpial championships since we've gone to the 6th classification era. They've made it to state championship games, so they've got good coaches. They had another kid transfer over from Woodland Hills. So you look at their roster and you're like, they've got talented kids. They've got a quarterback with a major Power 5 offer and a couple other like MAC schools sprinkled in. And you think like they're going to score a lot of points and they're going to be contenders. And it's that's
hasn't happened
right
so
now,
far.
They've scored 15 points in 3 games. Like, that's just
that's a bad trend. I mean, you say there's no reason to press the panic button. I think that Gateway needed to press the panic button last week.
If here's what I'll say for Gateway: if they go to Franklin Regional this week and get blown out by Franklin Regional, they should absolutely push the panic button. But if they have an opportunity, because none of these games have been conference games for them so far, so they have an opportunity this week against a conference opponent in Franklin Regional to go and, if they get a win, however it is, by 1 point in overtime, whatever it takes, like if Gateway gets a win this week, then I think you see them turn it around. If they lose, especially if they lose big, they could be in trouble.
Yeah, really, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right.
Sarah Catholic kind of has the opposite problem of Gateway, that Sarah was a team for a couple years ago when they won the Wpial title, went to the state championship game, had an awesome defense, and now they've given up 40 plus points all 3 weeks. So their defensive coordinator, Coach Keem, who we interviewed on the show a few years ago, has moved on. I think he's at Chartiers Valley now. But nevertheless, Sarah just can't stop anybody. They've given up 40 plus in all 3 games, and Stowe Rocks has both problems. But what I'll say for Stowe Rocks is Stowe Rocks, 2A school, graduated a lot of kids from graduated a lot of kids from a very talented team last year that went to the semifinals like 3 straight years. So they're working in some new players, and they played the defending 2A Wpial champs and an Avonworth team that just beat a really good Central Valley team, who's in 3A. So not ready to panic on Stowe Rocks yet. It's still early. They haven't even gotten into conference play for them yet. And they've played probably the toughest schedule of this group of teams on the slide of teams we thought were contenders, but haven't shown it so far yet this year. Gateway needs more offense. Sarah needs more defense.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
This week's Wpial let me start that over. This week's Wpial Blitz Show Player of the Week, presented by Go MVB, is Peyton Wayner from Central Catholic. This one was a really easy choice. If you produce 7 touchdowns in a week, you're probably going to get our Player of the Week award.
I was shocked that you didn't have this game in one of the game highlights there. My God, how many points were scored in this one?
There was over 100, although Central, credit to Bethel Park for not giving up, right? Central got out to it was 63-14 or something at halftime. It was 35-7 after the first quarter. I mean, Central was just lighting them up. Central pulled their starters the second half, but Bethel Park just kept scoring and scoring and scoring. So the final score had a lot more points. Bethel did not give up at all, so credit to them. But yeah, big win for Central Catholic. Ryan Lehmeyer, their head coach, friend of the show. And last week we had Andrew Kubin from Avonworth as our Player of the Week, and I said it's not always about the guys who put up a bunch of touchdowns, and sometimes it's about when you make big plays. Well, this week it's about the guy that put up 7 touchdowns, because 7 touchdowns does not happen very often. 5 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, just an all-around great performance for Peyton Wayner and the Central Catholic Vikings, who are another team who traditionally ran the ball a lot, and now with Ryan Lehmeyer, their head coach, have really opened things up through the passing game.
Yeah, congratulations there.
our other top performers from this week, two other guys put up 5 touchdowns. Jake Wolf from Montour, we talked about that game earlier, and then Tyree Turner from Greensburg Central Catholic. Julian Duggar from Penn Hills had accounted for all 4 touchdowns in their big win over Pine Richland, 2 passing and 2 rushing there. Matt Seg from Fort Cherry, I mean, I feel like I talk about him every week just because he does something that like you don't expect, right? This week, 2 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, and had a pick 6 on defense. Like,
Wow.
I feel almost like Matt Seg is the Wpial version of Shohei Ohtani, right? That it's like every time you talk about him, it's something that's like never been done before or not been done for 100 years or whatever. Just because
you should get the Lifetime Achievement Award.
And he's only a sophomore. He ran and passed for 1,000 yards last year as a freshman. I think he ran like a sub 1,100 yard dash or something like that. Like, he's a track star. He does everything. He's just an incredible athlete. And then Colton Fedrizi from Shenango, 3 receiving touchdowns. Anytime you put up 3 receiving touchdowns, that's impressive. And then Caden Singleton from Cannon McMillan, Delaware commit, 4 sacks and a pick 6 on defense. We don't often get a lot of defensive stats to be able to give shout outs to people.
Yeah.
But, shout out to Caden for that really good performance.
Yeah, that's a good get on Caden Singleton because, he's just a beast out there. And, I don't know. Maybe we need to talk about the, offensive and defensive players of the week or something like that. Let us know on the chat. I mean, whether you want to see that, guys. I mean, had a few guys out there. They're just kind of watching the show and dropping a few lines here and there, but no questions yet, Ian. So let's move on.
Okay. Yeah. If anyone wants to send us questions, we are happy to answer them during the show. Absolutely. And for any players who might be watching, feel free to tag me in your highlight clips that you post on Twitter or wherever else. And yeah, tag me at Wpial Blitz, and happy to retweet them and maybe include your stat lines and potentially get noticed for our show. All right. Speaking of our streak watch, which we talked about a little earlier with some of the hot and not so hot teams, a lot of teams ending streaks this week. Steel Valley, Pine Richland, and Union all going down. So not a very good week for the defending Wpial champions, going just 3-3. North Allegheny beating Erie McDowell in a non-Wpial game, so their streak number against Wpial opponents will not go up. Bell Vernon won their 13th straight game with that overtime victory over McKeesport. Aliquippa thoroughly dominating North Catholic. Actually, it was 26-7. And North threw a pick 6 on the last play of the game as time expired. Wow. And made it 33-7. But nice win for Aliquippa. And then on the active losing streak side, earlier in the show, we talked a little bit about how for some of the bigger schools, it can be harder to turn things around. You look at this, Ringgold's a 4A school, Fox Chapel's a 5A school, New Brighton's a 2A school, but Newcastle's a 4A school. So, most of this list of active losing streaks now is actually schools that are in the higher classifications.
Yeah.
And congratulations to Springdale ending a 13-game losing streak with their win over Summit Academy. That was the only Saturday game that happened. So that was an easy one to follow.
Yeah, we actually didn't finish our week until today out here. My God, there were, I think, about a dozen games that were finishing up actually this afternoon, believe it or not, because of all the bad weather and what have you. Yeah, lightning and everything else. But anyway, we talked about, Go MVP, the player of the game. Is your social media ready for a college coach to review? That is the burning question, because 90%, over 90% of college coaches are making their initial view of your stuff online, okay? Whether that's Twitter, Instagram, or what have you. Go MVB will take a look at your social media and brush it up. They are a public relations firm for athletes. You athletes are not competing just against those guys that you see out on the field, every Friday night. You're competing against college athletes too, because of what's going on in the transfer portal. Really incredible statistics on how many guys are going in the transfer portal as well. So how do you combat that? You work with an organization like Go MVB that is in touch with all types of college coaches via social media. I mean, they are just a beast on Instagram. And go to www.gomvb.com/SSM special. See what Go MVB is all about. 85% of the athletes that use Go MVB get college offers. And it's not just for football players. They do it with every sport. You get your own social media page, or get your own web page, and they put out social media for you. You never have to worry about them not publicizing you in front of college coaches. Go MVB. Just check it out at gomvb.com/SSM special.
Okay, so as we move forward in the schedule, we recapped week 2. Now we're moving into week 3. So we've got conference play happening for most of the 5A conferences. There's a 6A conference game this week as well. And then teams that play in conferences that have 7 or 8 teams in them will also begin conference play this week in all the lower classifications. So we will have conference games that count towards playoff qualification happening across all 6 classifications this week. So now we're really starting to get into the meat of the schedule. We're about a third of the way into the season already, which is hard to believe, but here we are. And now's when things start to heat up. So buckle the chin strap and here we go. Our week 3 games of the week in 6A, Central Catholic taking on Mount Lebanon in a battle of unbeaten schools and schools that have new head coaches. So obviously Ryan Lehmeyer at Central Catholic, Mount Lebanon with Mike Colati, the former Elizabeth Forward head coach. Lebo's been playing really good defense, won close games the last 2 weeks against Bethel Park and Moon. This will be one of their biggest challenges of the season against a Central Catholic offense that just put up 63 points against Bethel Park. So really, really explosive Central team. Lebo's been playing good defense, but Lebo's got a lot of young starters on their team, so they're still kind of growing, but we'll see how it goes. In 5A, conference game between Peters Township and South Fayette, and that should be a good one in the Allegheny 6 conference. Both of those schools off to good starts. In 4A, Montour taking on Aliquippa in a battle of undefeated teams. Thomas Jefferson taking on Latrobe in the conference opener for those 2 schools. Both of those teams off to good starts. Thomas Jefferson obviously coming off winning their 500th game in school history. And Latrobe, a team that's trending upwards. Last year, they won their first playoff game since I think 1968. So, trending in the right direction for the Wildcats. And then in the Greater Allegheny Conference, Mars, who, is considered a top contender for the conference crown, against an Indiana team that finished toward the bottom of the conference last year, but is off to a 2-1 start. So the Little Indians from Indiana are trending in the right direction, and we'll see how competitive they are against a really high-powered Mars offense. In 3A, South Park taking on Beaver in a battle of undefeated teams. Both of those schools made the playoffs last year, actually finished in a 3-way tie for second with West Mifflin. So, head-to-head results will matter, and someone's going to be the top challenger to Avonworth in this conference. So we'll see who it is, and both schools off to good starts. Both schools running the ball really well. Beaver's got 2 running backs that have really torn it up. And South Park's running back's been really good so far this year too. I can't pronounce his name, so I'm not going to try because I don't want to mess it up. All right. I think it's Derue. It's Doerue. So I think it's Eric Derue is I think how you pronounce it. But sorry if I messed that up. In 2A, this might be one of the biggest games of the week to watch.
That
Steel
is.
Valley,
I think it
the
is.
defending Wpial champions against an Imani Christian team that's loaded with playmakers. And Imani's only loss was in that, Peach Bowl showcase this year?
Yeah, I was so impressed with that team, Imani. I think just it's almost a 4 or 5A team in a 2A body. I mean, it's the really good size, as you touched on, playmakers all over, and very solid quarterback play. But yeah, I mean, right out of the box, I mean, wow. I mean, it could really send one of the teams off into Bolivian here, like in week 1 of the conference schedule. What do you think?
I don't know if it would send them off into oblivion, because we've seen before, a couple years ago, Steel Valley won the conference title, got the #1 seed, but then got upset in the playoffs, and Sarah Catholic, who finished second, went on to win the Wpial title. So, but it's definitely going to be a key game in the race for the conference title, and potentially the #1 seed in the 2A playoffs, considering Steel Valley's gotten the top seed a couple times in the last few years. I think 2 times in the last 3 years. So so definitely a big early season game with heavy playoff implications. Maybe if Manny wins, we can try and get Coach Johnson on, because it would be pretty cool to talk to him.
Yeah, it sure would.
But yeah, big game there. And then in 1A, Shenango taking on Union. Union coming off that loss to Cornell last week. So the defending Wpial champs are 2-1 and start conference play against the Shenango team that won only 2 games last year and has won 2 games so far this year. So, a team at the top and a team trending upwards, and we'll see how it goes. And the other 1A game of the week, Riverview taking on Clairton. Clairton has played an incredibly tough schedule. Got that win over Olsh last week, but now starting conference play against a Riverview team who has really been impressive, especially on the ground this year. They run kind of a triple option attack. They've got 3 running backs, including their quarterback, who can really do some damage on the ground. So a measuring stick game for Riverview against the Clairton team that is one of the favorites in the conference, along with Greensburg Central Catholic. But see how Riverview stacks up against them if they deem themselves to be playoff contenders here, or if Clairton just runs over them. Then we know that Clairton is Clairton, as they are.
Yep.
Some big non-conference games. Elizabeth Forward taking on Shadyside Academy. Shadyside upset Elizabeth Forward in the playoffs last year, so Elizabeth Forward is going to be out for some revenge in this one. Like we said at the outset of the show, when we interviewed Knoch head coach Tim Burchett, Knoch taking on Southmoreland in a battle of 3-0 teams. This is probably our storyline game of the week, that 2 schools that had really been down on their luck for a while now having a resurgence, both off to 3-0 starts. So really cool to see this game. It's a non-conference game, so it doesn't matter towards the playoffs, but definitely our feel-good storyline game of the week. And then Washington is a 2A school taking on Greensburg Central Catholic. Should just be a really good matchup of 2 really strong teams.
Yeah, a lot of good games this week for sure.
There are. And shout out to some friends of our show that broadcast games each week. KDKA's game of the week is Franklin Regional taking on Gateway, that we talked about earlier as being a really important game for Gateway's season, kind of a watershed moment for them. Looking forward to see how the rest of their season will go. Our friends at WMBS out of Uniontown doing the Laurel Highlands at McKeesport game. Laurel Highlands lost a tough, close game to Kiski last week, and McKeesport coming off a close loss to Bell Vernon, although Bell Vernon just thumped Laurel Highlands 40-0 the week before. So, we'll see how it goes. McKeesport's really good. And then WHJB out of Greensburg broadcasting the Shaler and Hempfield game this week as well. So shout out to the friends of our show. You can tune into their radio broadcasts of the games. There's also some games on TV through, what was the CW. It's now called KDKA Plus. So they have a game on TV, and 22 The Point has a TV game. So shout out to all them, and definitely tune into some high school football action.
Absolutely. We're all trying to do the same thing, which is promote these teams and players. So we're just doing our part to try and promote the broadcasts that are promoting the players.
Yes. And people that
and you
tag
who
us
are
and
on some of these
retweet our
broadcasts.
stuff.
Sure, right.
Yeah. I do a little bit on the WMBS.
I guess we're going to have to start putting my Penn Live game in here.
We can include that too,
every week, since we're doing those games. I mean, they can get it. They can get my game online. I mean, I don't want people throwing up in their mouth when they hear me broadcast a game or anything like that. But they're usually pretty good games. So
yeah, it's good to know where you can, listen to friends of the show. We like to give shout outs to people that, reciprocate and give shout outs to us.
Yeah, right. And reciprocation as far as I mean, The Wpial isn't on an island. They are part of the PIAA. It is good that you kind of take a look at like other parts of the state as well. And our Penn Live game is going to be East Pennsboro and Gettysburg this week. So yeah, East Pennsboro 3-0, and it's like their 1000th game in school history. And I don't know where I'm broadcasting from because there's supposed to be some gigantic crowd, but we'll get the game on somehow.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll say too, is I'm always of the opinion that the more information that's out there about high school football, the more content that's out there, the better, because all it takes is, maybe one college coach, college recruiter seeing a player's name, seeing a highlight, and maybe that changes that kid's life. Or there's just a lot of people out there that like to know things about either their local school where they live, or the school they went to high school, or just some other team or player that they like to follow. I know we have a statewide audience sometimes, so I try and make references to, oh, this kid's got a Penn State offer, this kid's got a Pitt offer, because there's fans of those schools that like to follow their recruits. College recruiting is a big thing. So just like first week of the show, we had John from PA Football Today, or PA Today Sports, on, and he's doing a great job out there of just getting information out there about teams and players and all that. And I love to try and promote that kind of stuff because, in my opinion, the more information out there for people to consume, the better.
I just talked about with Go MVB and the statistic that over 90% of the college coaches are going to find their recruits online before anywhere else, and then kind of take it from there. So first impressions, I mean, that's everything, and I don't mean to keep going down the Go MVB route, but I'm just telling you that what they could do for an athlete to make sure that online presence is where it needs to be to get noticed. There isn't anything better out there. And the reason why that I became involved with Go MVB is because of what they do for the athletes. Okay. And all I have to say is just go on Go MVB. Follow. I tell you what, do you just follow on Twitter and Instagram and seeing what they're doing for their athletes that are working with them, and you'll want to become one of those athletes. That's all I have to say. So,
and I'll just chime in and add that, just this past week, I had a college, I think it was D2 offensive line coach, tag me in a tweet that said, "Hey, anybody got good offensive line film out there? I want to watch some linemen this weekend." I think it was on Saturday morning. He's like, "Anybody got good offensive line film? I want to watch it." So, like you said, there's college coaches out there on Twitter looking for film of players.
Yep, absolutely right. And all I could say too is that I've done a recruiting podcast with a couple friends of mine, Get Recruited Consulting and One of One Life Skills. We have 20 episodes out there covering every topic you would ever want related to college football recruiting. And I think we have 3 episodes on what needs to be in your highlight film. And that's the most important thing out there that you can get to get noticed. And so anyway, and absolutely right. I mean, these guys are out there. You just got to get noticed.
Absolutely. So people who don't need noticed anymore are people who won things in the past.
They still like to feel like they're relevant. I mean, come on.
Yes. So we've been doing these Wpial look backs thanks to our friends at PA Football History for digging up some good information for us. Also, shout out to Rush Petter. You can follow him at Rush Petter on Twitter. He's a Penn Trafford guy, but he wrote this book called Western Pennsylvania High School Football History. It only goes up through 2018, but this was the best $20 I've ever spent in my life buying this book. It has tons of great historical information. I can't recommend it enough, especially if he comes out with a new updated one, since it's been about 5 years since he published this one. At any rate, thanks to PA Football History for helping us dig out some stuff. Last week, we talked about the 100-year anniversary of the 1923 Washington team that was undefeated, untied, and unscored upon. They shut out all their opponents. This week, we move forward a decade. So 90 years ago, was the 1933 Wpial championships. The Wpial had just moved to 3 classifications in 1932 because actually they had been playing as 2 classifications, and some of the larger schools thought that it was a little bit unfair to be playing these smaller schools. So they kind of broke off and formed what became AA, and then A and B. And then as things evolved in, I think it was 1973, they switched the labeling on them. So what was AA became AAA, what was A became AA, and what was B became A. So, kind of the natural evolution of
Can you
things. And in
repeat that? No,
1980,
I'm just kidding.
yeah, AA, A, and B became A through AAA. There we go. All right. But at any rate, back in the day, they used the Gardner point system, which is basically a strength of victory metric that they used. They still use it today, but it's a little bit different. So Newcastle was awarded the AA championship. They're actually supposed to play Greensburg in the championship game, but Greensburg declined to play the game. So Newcastle was just awarded the championship. North Braddock Scott was awarded the Class A championship because they had the most Gardner points. And then Ramsey beat East Pittsburgh in the Class B championship game. So, those schools all had very, very good teams back in the day. And only one of those, Newcastle, is still around. North Braddock Scott merged into General Braddock High School, which then merged into Woodland Hills. So we all know how good Woodland Hills program has been since they became a school. But that area has produced very good football for a very long time. Ramsey merged with Hearst to form Mount Pleasant area. So that's kind of to give you a geographic sense. Ramsey is Mount Pleasant predecessor school. This was the only Wpial title for Ramsey. Hearst won a couple in between 1933 and
I love the picture. I love the picture.
Shout out to my guy PA Football History. He found that one for me. He does a great job. Everyone should follow him on Twitter and Facebook. Now he has a Facebook page too, but always finds this good historical tidbits. So he found this one too from the North Braddock Scott team. This was the first championship they had. So the first championship in that area. And this kind of the 1930s was kind of the age of Wpial dynasty. So there weren't organized conferences like we have now, really even organized playoffs. They kind of did this Gardner points thing, and whoever wound up, if there was one team that had the most at the end of the year, they just got awarded the championship. If there were 2 teams that were tied, it's like, all right, you're going to play for a championship game. But Newcastle won 26 straight games in this time frame, 3 straight championships. North Braddock Scott, they went 9-0-1 in 1933 when they were awarded the title. So 9 wins and a tie. And that was part of a 42-game unbeaten streak that spanned from 1932 to 1936 for Scott High and North Braddock.
Wow.
Yep. And as you can see, they won 4 Wpial championships in 5 years. So really, really strong dynasty there. And then Braddock High School, their successor, I think Braddock had the record for longest winning streak in the Wpial until Clairton broke it about 10 years ago. So yeah, a lot of good football happened in the Woodland Hills area in that Turtle Creek Valley for a long time. And then Ambridge, back in the day, they also awarded county championships to like the best team in the county. Ambridge was the Beaver County champions from 1932 to 1936 and had a 25-game unbeaten streak with 1 tie in there as well. So
interesting.
Some
the
cool
one thing that you're not
tidbits.
showing in these old things there is how different the ball was back then. It definitely was a different shape. So
yeah. All right. So
all right.
Our top 5 overall teams. I let you go first last week, so I'll talk first this week. This is a little segment we like to do on the show. We both approach our lists a little differently. My list, I like to take it as, if the teams lined up and played each other on the field, who I think would beat everybody. And North Allegheny and Central Catholic are 1 and 2. That's not to disparage Central Catholic. They've had a great start to the season, but North Allegheny is the defending 6A champs. They beat Central Catholic twice last year and returned pretty much all their starters. So until Central knocks off North Allegheny, the Tigers will be my number 1 team. Central number 2, Aliquippa number 3, because you line up Aliquippa against anyone and they're not going to back down and they've got a puncher's chance. And then Thomas Jefferson and Bell Vernon round out my top 5, especially after Bell Vernon, beat McKeesport in overtime this week.
And, this is probably the biggest, disparity between our two lists. I think since we started doing this, really wasn't until last year, but, still, we've kind of been in lockstep, just like the same teams in different order. I think this is the first time that we've really had a fairly large, I mean, your number 1 is my number 5. That's never happened. Also the fact that I really have 2 teams in mine and that aren't in yours and vice versa. So I think a lot to be decided. Look, I think what it just says is that there's still a lot of really good teams out there. I mean, that are undefeated. Bell Vernon, I mean, it was only a 21-14 win in overtime. Not that they're not a, good team or whatever like that. Thomas Jefferson, yeah, I mean, they're really good. So look, I'm showing a little love to the lower classifications here, in my top 5, and I always will, if it makes sense.
Yeah. I still think we should do like a big school, small school, like 4A, 5A, 6A, top 5, and 1A, 2A, 3A.
Well, then if and look, I'm a guy that'll compromise. Then we'd have to do like top 3, like big school, small school, top 3. We'll talk about that this week. Okay. Hey, let us know out there, guys. I mean, no, let's put this to the fans. I mean, do we do a big school, small school? I mean, maybe a big school, small school, top 4 for each one of us, might make sense. So let us know out there. Give us some comments. We've had some people comment. They haven't really asked questions. They've just kind of thrown out comments here on the chat tonight, but it's been very active. So thanks for everybody for participating in the show. That's why we do this live, so that we can get the live chat going and answer the questions during the broadcast.
Yeah, we really appreciate everyone that tunes in live and the people that watch us later and listen to the show. We started this as just a way to talk about football during COVID and, share some stories. And it's been so much fun to do this. So we're really thankful for everyone that tunes in every week and watches. Speaking of, hold on, there we go. Speaking of our shows, we're also on other shows. So if you like us here, you can listen to us talk more about other things. I have my Steelers podcast, the Steel City Blitz podcast. So you can tune into that on Thursday nights, usually around 10 o'clock on YouTube on the Steel City Blitz channel. And Bruce has his Eastern PA football show.
Yeah, fresh set of downs. We'll get started with that. My partners have been a little bit on hiatus, but we're going to get started here in 2 weeks with fresh set of downs, and that's actually going to include some Maxwell Mini Max awards segment as well, along with, we might throw a little Penn State football in there too with our fresh set of downs. So Eastern PA football really, covers all football, not only in the East but in the state. Penn State, the Mini Max Awards related to the Maxwell Football Club. We're all about football there on Fresh Set of Downs. So, yeah, definitely. We'll keep that up. And like I said, I'll be broadcasting the East Pennsboro-Gettysburg game for Penn Live on Friday night. So that should be a lot of fun as well. If I can find a game to do on Saturday, I'll do that too. I'll probably report somewhere. We'll find a Saturday game and be out there as well.
All right. And thanks everyone for tuning into the show this week. As we mentioned, tag us on Twitter when you post your huddle videos and we're happy to retweet them. You can check us out on Facebook and our rarely used Instagram, and check out my Games of the Week articles, Wpial standings page on steelcityblitz.com. And thanks again to Go MVB for their support of the show. And we talked a little bit, during the show about what they provide as well. So thanks everyone for tuning in. We really appreciate all the support, everyone watching, commenting live during the show, as well as everyone else that, gets in touch with us during the week, and, everyone that interacts with us on Friday nights too. It's a lot of fun to be part of the high school football experience in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it really is. And Ian, I tell you what, you're amazing, my friend. All the stats that you put together, and what have you. I mean, just I mean, truth be told, I mean, the heavy in this broadcast is Ian McMeans with all he does to put everything together. So I'm just quite honestly, I'm on the show, but and comment or whatever. But Ian, I tell you what, great job again, my friend. And we'll be back next week. And like I said, like Ian talked about, don't hesitate to interact with both Ian and I all week long. We really appreciate all of your comments. So for Ian McMeans, I'm Bruce Badgley. Thanks for watching the WPIAL Blitz Show podcast. We'll see you next Monday.